The January 6th committee will hold what could be its final public hearing this Wednesday. One former advisor to the committee is now raising new questions about what was happening inside the White House during the January 6th insurrection. In a new interview, a former senior technical advisor to the committee, Denver Riggleman, pictured there, says that a Capitol rioter had a short call with the White House on the day of the attack.
You get a real aha moment when you see that the White House switchboard had connected to a rioter's phone while it's happening.
Someone in the White House was calling one of the rioters while the riot was going on?
On January 6th, absolutely.
CNN senior reporter, crime and justice reporter Caitlin Polans joins me now. So a call from the White House to a rioter right in the middle of this. What do we know about the call, how long it was, who it went to, and anything else?
Well, Jim, we know a few things. This is the only known call from the White House to the phone of a rioter while the riot was taking place. But there's a few things here based on months of reporting from correspondent Jamie Gangel and producer Elizabeth Stewart. This phone call from a White House landline, the publicly available number for the White House, it lasted for only 9 seconds. Who placed the call and why remains a mystery. Phone logs don't reveal any specific extension of that line, but we have learned the rioter who received it is named Anton Lunick from Brooklyn. He attended the Ellipse rally with 2 friends. They were only in the Capitol for a few minutes, and he is seen on a cell phone video leaving the Capitol building through a window. That call happened after they left the Capitol, and Lunick was likely on his way back to New York, his home already. According to one source, though, the House committee continues to investigate this call, but so far they've been unable to discover who placed it or why. Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren downplayed Riggleman's comments yesterday on CNN. Here she is on the committee's work.
Everything that he was able to relay or to discern prior to his departure has been followed up on, and in some cases didn't really peter out, or there might have been a suggestion that there was a connection between one number or one email and a person that turned out not to pan out. So we follow up on everything.
So earlier this year, Lunick and his 2 friends pleaded guilty in federal court to demonstrating inside the Capitol. They were sentenced to home confinement and probation. Attorneys for all 3 men declined to comment to CNN, and prosecutors never mentioned this call during their court proceedings. But according to multiple sources familiar with this investigation, Lunick says he doesn't remember receiving the 9-second call, and he claims he doesn't know anyone who worked in the Trump White House. So, Jim, there's still a lot of mystery here, and it's really hard to say at this time how significant this detail is.
No question. Outgoing call. Caitlin Polans, thanks very much.
Let's get some insights from CNN's mar-a-lago, Margaret Talev of Axios, Sungmin Kim of the Associated Press, and the former federal prosecutor, Shan Wu. It is interesting. The committee will be back in the hearing room this week. Let's listen to it right off the top. And yet, that's the former Congressman, Denver Riggleman, who was then an advisor to the committee. He says it's an aha moment. Several members of the committee say, maybe not.
I don't know what Mr. Riggleman is doing, really.
That's one of thousands of details that obviously the committee is aware of.
We've been very careful about what we say, not to overstate matters, not to understate matters, and without the advantage of the additional information we've gathered since he left the committee, you know, it I think poses real risk to be suggesting things.
Why are committee members so down on what is it? Maybe there's nothing there, but just the idea that somebody from the White House called somebody at the Capitol in the middle of the riot, 17 minutes after the president finally sent out that message, go home. I want to know.
You know, there's a couple of reasons. One of which is that what Denver Riggleman has been saying has not been sanctioned by this committee. They, in fact, did not want any of their staffers or former staffers revealing any of the details because of their concerns that it may suggest something that they simply don't know the answer to. They may have a lot of questions they're trying to search here going forward. And also, they have a mountain of evidence on a whole host of other issues involving the president, involving his allies, involving the efforts to overturn the election, involving what happened on that day in January 6th. They want to focus on those issues, not chase things that may not amount to much, which is why you're seeing this pushback. The question will be how much in this hearing that will come up on Wednesday, how much new information do they present? Because they've presented a lot so far, but they've been a little cagey about exactly the new details that may ultimately come up.
Right, back to that in 1 second, but this idea that I completely get, Shan, why the committee wants to tell the American people what we know, not what we think, or not what we're still working on. However, they have the records of a call to the cell phone from 456-1414, the White House switchboard. As a prosecutor, can you find out? Can you trace it? Can you trace back to the system and say, where did this come from?
You can. I think in cases like this involving White House members of Congress, if this was the FBI or DOJ, they would be very sensitive to drilling down to see whose number it was. The committee may be equally sensitive since they're members of Congress as well, but it certainly would be a very valuable roadmap to have. And I think, to Manu's point, their concern is that if it leaks out piecemeal, it's kind of like that law of thermodynamics where the observation affects the data. It can cause other people to tailor what they're saying and can mess up the kind of results they're getting from their investigation.
So they prefer you not talk about it until they know the full story. I guess I get that. So then we have this big hearing. The committee took the summer off, essentially. They come back in. This could be the last evidentiary hearing, they say, laying out the information. One of the committee members, Jamie Raskin, says, we're learning a lot.
What we're going to do on Wednesday is fill in those details that have come to the attention of the committee over the last 5 or 6 weeks. It may be the last investigative public hearing where we're going to try to round out the factual narrative. I'm hopeful, speaking just as one member, that we will have a hearing that lays out all of our legislative recommendations.
To Manu's point, at every previous public hearing, we have learned a ton.
Right.
We have learned a ton. Do we understand what we're going to get on Wednesday?
It's not yet clear. Obviously, we've seen how members of the January 6th committee haven't yet really telegraphed what specifically we're going to know. But you're certainly right. We have learned a lot of things from the 8 or so public hearings that we've had. And a lot of it is because they've been so, so rigorous and so disciplined with how little information that they were keeping amongst themselves to be able to present to the public. And they've done it in a number of ways. Obviously, they've hired former television producers to create a very compelling narrative. Zoe Lofgren said that they're actually going to do it in daytime this week so that Fox News has a higher chance of airing these public hearings to try to reach conservative viewers. So I think that's why the Denver Riggleman interview kind of really rankled the committee members, because it was a very undisciplined leap for a committee that has been very disciplined so far.
Is the goal in trying to reach more conservatives by having a daytime hearing, is it to change their minds if they still believe somehow that the election was stolen, or that Donald Trump had nothing to do with what happened at the Capitol, or is it to influence an election that will be 6 weeks from tomorrow? Or both?
I mean, that committee is mostly Democrats. You can't take the political backdrop out of this. I also think that there have been substantive disclosures in every single hearing, and there are things that we probably won't see flushed out in this hearing that are still the ongoing work of this committee, whether it is talking with Ginny Thomas and trying to understand all that comes with that, wife of a Supreme Court justice, whether it is the Mike Pence issue, which certainly sounds like the committee is still thinking very actively about whether to try to compel more from the vice president himself, not just people who speak for him. And then there's what happens after this hearing and after the election, which is, will there be a referral? What will that look like? Liz Cheney offering some clues over the weekend, saying she thinks anything the committee decides will be unanimous. Read what you want to. I know what I read into it, or at least what I think I read into it. Right. So there is still a lot to come beyond this week's hearing. We're at a disadvantage as journalists. We want to know everything, including what Denver Riggleman knows. Right. But the committee knows more than we do at this moment.
One thing, I talked to Jamie Raskin about this last week. I said, will there be significant new information revealed? He said it's in the eye of the beholder, which is a little bit different than what they said before, which would be major bombshells in past hearings. But I do think we will learn more about the Secret Service in this and how all those text messages that were deleted on January 6th, and the run-up to January 6th, so discussions that happened within the Secret Service, so we could learn a lot more about everything that was happening around Donald Trump right in the run-up to the riot.
If you think about the sequence of hearings as a prosecution, and you were the prosecutor, what do you want to do with this one? What would your goal be coming into what could be, as the Congressman Raskin, your final evidentiary hearing?
Well, that's the difference between a congressional hearing and a trial. If it was a trial, you want to end with the sum up and the bombshell and the ask to the jury. I think here they have had so many unexpected tangents they had to go down and run down substantively. I think this is a new area. They want to present the full picture to the American people. I don't expect it to look like a summation in a trial.